Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hey, I'm Kim Holderness.
And I'm Ben Holderness.
We host the Holderness Family Podcast every Tuesday.
You may know us from the silly videos that we make online.
Or a book about marriage called Everybody Fights.
Or as winners of season 33 of The Amazing Race.
Still can't believe that happened. Listen, we do a lot of stuff, but our podcast is our most favorite thing.
Yeah, because every week we get to sit down face to face, talk to each other about marriage, family, mental health, or just anything that we want to know more about.
Sometimes we have expert interviews, sometimes it's just us, but our goal is to bring some joy and laughter into your life every week.
Our other goal is that maybe you will learn something as well.
Right, so search the Holderness Family Podcast and check out our most recent episodes. We have one about staying organized with creators of the Home Edit.
And one about being diagnosed with ADHD as an adult.
We hope you'll join us.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hi, it's Dave here. This is my wife, Kathy.
Hello.
This is the Cinemile, the podcast where we used to walk home from the movies.
And today we're walking to a 4-hour movie.
Yeah, well, we're
on
walking
our TV.
to it back in our house. This podcast concept is so redundant now.
Do you know what? A year into COVID, it makes a lot of sense.
So we're going to watch the Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think I'd be surprised if any of our listeners don't know what this is or the context of it, but just in case, let's give a quick sort of top line sort of what the hell is this, and didn't the Justice League already come out 3 years ago?
And for anyone who was wondering if we previously reviewed the Justice League movie on this feed, we actually didn't. We missed it when it was in the cinema, and then
I think it was when Oscar was just born, right?
I can't remember. And then when it came out on demand, we were going to do an episode on it. We actually sat down to watch it, and I think I got about 40 minutes in, and I just said, I actually can't watch this.
No, you made it a fair trick.
Maybe,
True.
and for I couldn't watch it anyway. So I couldn't watch it because I found it incomprehensible and dull at the same time. So we turned it off, and Dave finished it by himself another day, and we never did an episode. But for context, when we do a lot of, we watch a lot of superhero movies in this podcast, and we've covered all the Marvel ones that have come out and all the DC ones since we started the podcast, except this one. We actually love the Justice League, and a long time ago, probably 10 years ago,
we loved the cartoon.
We were obsessed with the Justice League
we used
cartoon.
to watch that cartoon
we
a
used
lot.
to watch it all the time, and I love Wonder Woman. She's my favourite superhero. So for me, the Justice League is the one I'm most interested in. So I was really disappointed by the first movie and the fact that I just couldn't watch it. So I'm hoping I've actually got genuinely high expectations for this. Dave, what did you briefly think of the first movie, and then tell us why the hell the movie's been remade? Because that's extremely odd. It's often movies are remade, of course, A Star Is Born has been made 4 times, but it's not the same cast and the same movie just kind of re-released. So it's all very interesting.
Yeah, I thought I didn't think much of it. I thought it was really shambles. It was quite incoherent and cluttered. It felt like a product of its troubled back behind the scenes.
We did enjoy Henry Cavill's CGI'd mustache face.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, look, it was not very good. Is all I'll say. So the story of this one is that movie had a really troubled sort of backstory. There's a really good article on Vanity Fair, which we'll link to in the comments, outlining the sort of history of Zack Snyder's Justice League, which
so
we're
Dave,
about to watch.
Keep this very brief then.
So I will keep this very brief. Basically, him and his wife, Deborah Snyder, who's the producer of all these movies, were kind of put in charge by Warner Brothers of the DC cinematic or extended universe. So they call it the DCEU, which is the equivalent of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So
why is it called DCEU?
Because I think they wanted to.
They
DCCU doesn't sound as good, does it?
Is it is it an anti-Brexit world?
DC Extended Universe.
Right. Okay.
EU. But yes, there's a real Brexit sentiment involved here. So ever since he directed Man of Steel, then Batman v Superman, and he's kind of had a play and a hand in producing all of these movies. But then Warner Brothers allegedly kind of lost faith in him after Batman v Superman didn't perform well at the box office and got critically slated.
We have to say we weren't huge fans of that.
No. So apparently they got really heavy-handed on set, sent people to watch over the production of Justice League. Like, they kind of lost faith in him. And then, on top of that, him and his wife experienced a personal tragedy when their daughter passed away during the production of the movie. So
sad.
Very sad. And so they decided to naturally step away from the film to take time for themselves and their family. And as a result of that, Warner Brothers brought in Joss Whedon, who directed The Avengers, which was a huge $1 billion hit for Marvel, to finish the project, which resulted in a lot of reshoots.
And Joss Whedon, by the way, now he was getting an extremely poor rap in media and seems to actually treat people awfully when he works with them, or did when he worked on Buffy anyway.
Not a good year for Joss Whedon. A lot has come out.
Well, it's a great year for Joss Whedon. He's a rich bully, and he's just finally been called out on it, but I'm sure he's doing fine for himself.
Yeah, do you want to go into that whole thing
No,
now?
I don't.
Or this story is hard enough to tell as it is succinctly. So Joss Whedon comes in, the whole mustache thing happens because he does about reshoots like half the movie, restructures it. Also,
and Henry Cavill had a mustache at this point because he was filming Mission Impossible. So then when they filmed him for the Justice League, they had to CGI out his mustache, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's an amazing story there because Paramount wouldn't refuse to let him shave the mustache.
It's easier to wear a fake mustache than CGI out.
They refused to back down on it,
mustache?
which is amazing. If you want more on that, listen to Christopher McQuarrie on the Empire spoiler specials where he talks to Chris Hewitt every time for 4 hours, and he gives amazing insight on that whole thing.
On the Mission Impossible thing?
Yeah, because they came to him to request the mustache to be shaved.
We're doing too many deep dives.
You're steering me off it,
Sorry,
right?
sorry.
Okay, so Joss Whedon completes the movie. The other thing was, the other notes was keep it under 2 hours because Zack Snyder had a 4-hour rough cut on his laptop, which he exited at the time with.
And normally I agree with, by the way, keep a movie under 2 hours, but from what I saw of the other movie, by trying to condense it, it was incoherent.
Well, you've got six. The other thing is, like, the Justice League didn't have what the Avengers had, which was a 4-movie run-up.
Yeah,
you know,
all the
they
backstories.
had Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, then the Justice League, I believe.
So they needed to introduce the other characters.
So they had to introduce Aquaman, the Flash, Cyborg, and pretty much Wonder Woman, I think. She may have had her own movie or it came out after, I don't remember. So the movie is released. It does not perform well. It just about breaks even, maybe even a bit of a loss.
And was panned, right?
Pulled in like 600 million globally. Which
what a bomb!
Pretty much a bomb. It's not at all what they wanted, right? When you consider the Avengers back in 2012 pulled in $1 billion plus.
I mean, when you think how much this movie must have cost from all the reshoots,
exactly,
it would have been a very expensive movie.
So and then the critics slate it, and then the fans are basically like, we want to see, this isn't what Zack Snyder would have wanted. This is, and to be fair, I think I agree with them on that. It did feel like that movie felt like a product of too many voices, and the tone is muddled and inconsistent.
But what's interesting about this all is the fans all complained that they wanted to see Zack Snyder's cut, and then eventually this is what we're getting to see. But like, that often happens. Like when you went to see Han Solo, the director changed halfway through, but like, we were screaming the original Han Solo.
Well,
like,
the difference
like, no
is,
one, like, it's really unusual that this has come to pass.
well, that's the whole thing with the fans of the DC extended universe, and that Zack Snyder's been building. They are, if not loud.
And I guess all the like, the thing with it is they're very loud and vocal, somewhat very supportively of Zack Snyder, and on the darker side sometimes very troubling on the internet how personally they attack people about this. But they, from a studio's perspective, when you think about it, okay, they're all screaming for it, we're in the middle of a pandemic, we actually have all these scenes that Zack Snyder shot anyway. Why not let him take a pass at making this cut, release it on HBO Max, where, you know, a streaming platform are trying to push and, like, see what's up.
It's an incredibly no-brainer business decision. There's demonstrated consumer demand for this thing.
Yeah.
You've got to drive people to your product.
And look at us, we're watching it.
And you can do it all for only $70 million, allegedly, or whatever it costs to film this thing. So, which is probably a drop in the ocean for these people. So
here we are.
But there is, just to quickly point out the toxic nature of that fan base. So
some of that fan base,
yes, because on the whole of it, this comes across like a real rags to riches story, right? This is like
by rags you mean $600 million.
Not rags to riches. Sorry, but a bit of an underdog in a way. Again, doesn't make sense.
No.
But Zack Snyder experiences personal tragedy.
Yeah.
Can't fulfill his movie. And then gets the chance to do it, a 4-hour length version of his movie with basically no studio interference after they lost faith in him because the fan base supported him and propped him up and said, yeah, let's do it, we want
they
this.
put his name on it. Like, you'd never see a movie called, like, insert director's name here, movie.
Yeah. And as part of the campaign, the fan campaign, hashtag release the Snyder Cut, they raised a lot of money for
you mean money?
Suicide prevention and awareness charities. Sorry, yes, they raised a lot of money during the course of that campaign. So some real good was done, and also Zack Snyder himself has taken no money from this project.
Oh wow, that is interesting.
So there's a lot of it is on paper a real success story, but the problem is it has been tainted by a very vocal section of the DC online fan community who are just absolutely toxic, and we've personally have experienced just a drop in the ocean of it.
Not even
on Twitter, in which we were being threatened to, you know, have our accounts doxed and all this kind of stuff. Like, remove these people from the internet.
Dave put up a meme about someone in Avengers and someone in this movie.
Yeah, let's not get into that.
No,
detail,
but literally it was nothing. We ended up having to block the whole conversation. But particularly for female journalists who are critical of the any DC movie, it's bizarre how they get treated.
They pour out, and friend of the podcast, Helen O'Hara, we know has been personally attacked by people, and is but
it's bizarre
stands
because
up to them
I
online.
don't understand why there's this. I really don't understand why there's this Marvel versus DC thing, because to me, some of the Marvel movies are really good, some of them aren't. Some of the DC movies are really good, like I love Wonder Woman. Some of them I don't like Batman, Superman. They're all different things. Why are they grouped into just... At the end of the day, they're both ultimately huge blockbusters that are based on comics, which are all ripping each other off anyway, and it's all much ado about nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Can't you just like them all, or not like them all, or like some of them? I don't understand. It's just this weird human tribalism.
I feel like we're just trying to stop the inevitability of the fact that we just have to go and watch a 4-hour movie now.
Yeah, have we been talking for 4 hours already?
This is the longest intro we've ever done.
Yeah. Anyway, that's me succinctly describing how we got to this point. How are you feeling about this? Because I'm actually I'm really open-minded. I'm
really open-minded.
I'll be honest. I didn't think Batman v Superman was much good. The Justice League thing we got was worse. I'm not really excited for this as such.
I'm excited
but I'm open-minded to it.
I'm excited because I'm really intrigued by the story behind it all. We're also not planning on watching it all in one night, so we'll probably watch it over a couple of nights. So the fact that I know we're going to watch it in chunks is completely fine with me. Us, and I would say probably most people, we don't actually have 4 hours to sit and watch a movie. I'm either at work or I'm with the kids, or it's the evening and I don't have 4 solid hours to do it. So,
tired.
The only time I'd probably be able to watch it as a movie is if it was in the cinema and we took a day off work and went on our own to watch it. But there's no way anyone's watching it in front of their TV without pausing it.
Anyway, we better go. Let's go home, stick it on, see how far we get.
And
might be a few days before we come back.
I love Wonder Woman, and also I love Green Lantern. Why isn't he in this movie? Because I remember us being loving...
There was supposed to be a Green Lantern movie. There was a whole
You mean the Ryan Reynolds
DCEU
one?
road... No, that happened.
I know.
There was supposed to be a new one. There was a DCEU roadmap, much like Marvel do.
Do you remember how excited...
announced all these movies for 10 years. There was Justice League sequels in there and everything.
Do you remember how excited we were for the Green Lantern movie? And then we went to watch it.
Oh God, yeah. That was Drake.
But you know what? It was actually worth it all
Isn't
because
that where he met his wife?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was worth it all. Okay, let's go for our review is actually going to be shorter than our intro for Cinema First. Thank
Right,
you everyone
okay.
who's still listening. We'll be back in probably 5 weeks' time when we finish the movie.
Bye.
Bye.
The god is dead.
I had a dream. Almost like a premonition. I think there's an attack coming.
My lord, this world will fall.
I need warriors. I'm building an alliance to defend ourselves.
How do you know your team's strong enough? If you can't bring down the charging bull, then don't wave the red cape at it.
You were sent here for a reason. And even if it takes you the rest of your life, find out what that reason is.
They said the age of heroes would never come again.
It will. It has to.
Right, we're back, Kathy. How long has it been?
We watched
When was that? When did we record that extra long intro?
We watched it over 3 nights, so it turns out the movie's in parts, which is really handy. So we watched
It's a 6-part miniseries.
we treated
it's
it-
not a movie.
We treated it like a 6-part miniseries, watched 2 parts a night over 3 nights, and I have to say I really enjoyed it in that context.
Yeah,
It was like
I liked it as well.
I liked
All
it
right,
the
everyone,
second-
that's our episode.
like the second night and the third night, I was like really looking forward to jumping back into it. And I think that's how I recommend
never
you watch
thought
it.
I'd say it. It's an easy watch.
I mean,
it's
he probably split it into parts
it's
for
an
a
easy
reason.
breezy 4 hours.
Like, but he split it. Well, it's actually 3:45. That was credits at the end. So first of all, it's not 4 hours. But yeah, I think he obviously put the parts in for a reason to help people digest it. And yeah, that's how you should watch it. Watching it as a mini-series, I really enjoyed it. Like, as a movie, I would say no movie should ever be that long, and I think in one sitting it would become very dull. But the way we watched it, I thought, like, as I said, like, I'm a big Justice League fan anyway, but I didn't actually know Cyborg, because the cartoon we watched, he used to be in. It was Green Lantern instead. So I was so interested in Cyborg's backstory.
And Martian Manhunter in that cartoon
Yes,
we
the
watched.
one we used to watch.
Right, we will say no spoilers yet for Zack Snyder's Justice League. If it's your first time here, we'll turn on to spoiler street later when we get there.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed Cyborg. I love Wonder Woman as always. I'm actually a fan of Ben Affleck's Batman, so I
Yeah, me
enjoyed all
too.
that. I think they did the right thing about how they positioned Superman in the movie. I'll save the rest of that for spoiler street. I think they did well with the pacing of Superman. I think I really like Aquaman. I really enjoyed that movie as well when we did watch it. I actually enjoyed how it was segmented and the story was told. I think for me the weak link was The Flash. I was watching The Flash and I just kind of felt like what I would have more enjoyed as a Flash would have been like, you know, the young guy who plays Spider-Man in the Marvel movies. What's his name? Tom Holland.
Yeah.
I think because I've now seen someone that young playing Spider-Man, I felt like what's he called? Ezra Miller. He just felt too old to be the Flash. It just didn't work for me. I wasn't a huge. He was fine, but I wasn't a huge
The Flash
fan.
isn't a teenager though. He works in a crime lab.
I know, but I just, for some reason, the way he was acting was very childish, but the actor was too old for it. So either something wasn't working for me there, and I found the scenes with the Flash a little bit boring. My favourite 100% was Cyborg. I loved his backstory, and from what I vaguely remember the last movie, I feel like he got a lot more in this movie.
100%.
So I really enjoyed all that, and I feel like we'll need to get to spoiler street pretty quickly. So yeah, as a mini series to watch over 3 nights, I actually found it highly enjoyable.
Yeah, I'd recommend it as well. I mean, if you've got any bit of curiosity, you've probably already watched it.
We were pleased that it was on because we thought it was going to be one that we'd have to rent. And you know, often when you rent new releases, You've only got 48 hours to watch it, and we were like, oh, we can't watch it in 2 nights. Turns out it was on Sky Cinema, so we didn't have any time limit.
If you have Sky in the UK, it's there for free. Well, if you got the movies package.
So yeah, that's why I was very happy to watch it over 3 nights. Even if over 2 nights I wouldn't have enjoyed it, I think it would have been too much for me.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's one of the upsides of it is it gives. It's kind of cheating in a way. I was going to say he's like it gives a lot of the characters more time to breathe, but of course it does because it's 4 hours long.
Exactly. That's why it's not a film.
It's like that's why the 2-hour one. It's almost an unfair comparison point because that is doomed to fail when you've got all of these characters to introduce, plus a bad guy, plus like the brief that Joss Whedon was given was like under 2 hours, make it coherent and make it more fun.
And that can't work when
so it's
when
like
the
how are you supposed to do all that with the footage you have?
The script, yeah, exactly. The script had already been written to be this long. It had been filmed to be this long, and you're like after the fact trying to condense it down, and that's a thankless task.
So it's kind of unfair. So it's like it's in a way it's like, of course it like it does feel more coherent. It does feel like there's more character development. It does feel like there's a bit more emotion in this.
But like if he hadn't managed that, there'd be something really wrong with it.
Yeah, because he has all the room to breathe in this canvas. So what's interesting is what's an interesting question to ask at this stage is, are some of these things better as TV series than movies, considering that we've just gone through WandaVision and there's this whole Disney Plus experiment with big blockbuster superheroes as TV shows.
Well, for anyone who's interested, we just did a whole series review on WandaVision over on our Patreon. But I agree, it could never have been told in a movie like they did in that show.
Because WandaVision, also something that takes time and to focus on character and personal development and grief, something that you wouldn't see in a Marvel movie.
Yeah,
so
and this isn't even a movie. Like it's got no cinematic release. It's released in parts on on-demand platforms. Like let's call it what it is.
It's released in a display format, which is typically associated with television
from the 90s
in the history. So if anyone doesn't know, the movie's in 4:3 aspect ratio, which is for the old letterbox. So back when we used to have the tubes, the cathode ray tube television.
So tell me why this isn't 4:3, because I was like, what am I watching? At certain points between the way the CGI was done and that it was in 4:3, it genuinely looked like an old Doctor Who episode or like Quantum Leap. And Dave said, I'm going to explain to you on the podcast why it's in 4:3.
So it's an artistic choice that Zack Snyder made. So he became,
because he's like, it's a TV show.
He became when he was filming this, he was obsessed with the IMAX experience, like a lot of people are, which is a vertical experience. That is actually it's not 4:3, but it's a similar aspect ratio. It's vertically driven, right?
Yeah, but bearing in mind you're in like the
IMAX.
biggest cinema screens in the world.
Yeah. Now, but also the thing with IMAX is I don't know the full ins and outs of the technicalities of this stuff, so I'm sure you guys know better than I do. But you need to shoot on very special IMAX cameras that are like Christopher Nolan likes to do that, and they're typically very cumbersome and difficult to bring on set. That's why you don't film an entire movie for IMAX. What happens is that it goes into IMAX scenes for particular parts of the scene, parts of the movie. So it's a very particular and expensive and labor-driven process. It's not just make it in 4:3 and put it on an IMAX screen. This film, I believe, wasn't shot in IMAX. He just likes the look of that thing. Now, his justification for it, I kind of get. He said, superheroes are supposed to be like when they're standing and you're framing them, are picturesque and vertical. They're standing and they're posing and they're looking heroic. Widescreen gives more space to the background and makes them look smaller. And I'm like, when I first read that, I thought that's the stupidest thing ever. And when I saw the trailer, I was like, why? This is nonsense. But I gotta say, when I watched the movie with that in mind, when they do those hero poses, they fill the frame.
They do, but couldn't they have done like an IMAX and shrunk it when they needed to and brought it out again?
I think that would have been a bit distracting.
Because our TV isn't that big, so it just sometimes looks incredibly hokey, the special effects?
I don't know.
We're watching on a smallish TV.
Yeah, but I don't think
in 4:3.
I don't think hokey special effects are a product of the aspect ratio. I think that's that's a qualification of the effects themselves, right? That's nothing to do with it being in 4:3.
But being in 4:3 makes me think of a 90s TV show specifically. Well, and anything before that.
I gotta say, I actually thought it was good. It didn't bother me at all. I don't want it to be the standard going forward.
I mean, I also like that he put a stamp
intrusive.
on it. Like, it made it feel, again, different from the other films.
Yeah.
How much of it, like, when we were... Because I remembered not very much about the other film, other than that I felt like Cyborg was in this more. Before we get to Spoiler Street, how do you think... how different it is from the other movie? Because given you've seen the whole other movie.
Yeah, and I have a good memory for it. It's almost entirely different.
That's incredible.
Like, there's the scenes that were the same, were in the minority for sure. Like, most of this movie I had never seen before. So it's like, it is interesting. It's effectively an entirely different movie. And not only that, there are which we'll get to in Spoiler Street, but there are entire scenes that are different. Like, there's alternate versions of scenes and decisions the characters are making. The entire climax is different. Like, it's just from a different movie. Really with the same characters. It's
so the difference of a normal director's cut where you get like 20 extra minutes of more stuff.
Oh yeah, it feels very different. It's not a director's cut experience. Well, it kind of is, but it's not just a few extra bonus things. This is an entirely different story construct, and for the most part, I think it's actually is for the better.
I think we should go to Spoiler Street, but right before we go to Spoiler Street, I want to say that one of the most difficult things for me watching big budget superhero movies is that I always get really disengaged by the end when there's like huge action scenes. But because
Hugh Jackman scenes.
But because we turned on to parts 6 and 7 last night, fresh.
Well, part 6 and the epilogue.
Oh yeah, fine, the epilogue.
Which was an hour and a half.
Because I was fresh. I actually really enjoyed... First of all, I think he did a really good job on the fight scenes, and for me, a part of that is because he does a lot of slow-mo, so that really helps me follow the action. But because I was fresh and interested, I quite enjoyed all the action stuff, particularly the slow-mo helped me. Love all the Wonder Woman slow-mo stuff. But, like, I was really engaged, whereas imagine you'd sat and watched that for 4 hours. By the end, the action scenes, you'd have been like...
Well, here's something. I know we said that we're not going to do the whole DC Marvel thing, and I don't do that. I'm an equal opportunities.
But you're just about to do it.
Comic book nerd. Well, it was interesting though. In the same night, what you're describing, we watched the first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
No, the first 8 minutes.
We watched the first 8 minutes of it, which was just an action scene.
So
and
boring.
you said I can't watch this, and you switched it off because you were just bored.
I was like, this is the... Sorry, now we're going to do a separate review on this on our Patreon, but I've just watched WandaVision and the Justice League, both of which are like, incredibly drawn out like narratives. You expect me to sit and watch 8 minutes of Falcon flying around the place in a battle scene? No thanks.
We'll be going.
That's the intro.
I'm up for going back to it, but yeah, you weren't impressed.
I just thought that's not how you start a TV show.
I think that's a really interesting comparison.
Yeah.
In
fairness, I was probably action heroed out after 3 nights of the Justice League.
That was after the Justice League.
Yeah.
So, let's go to spoilers for this movie. But before we do, I'd like to give a quick shout out to some of our new patrons over at patreon.com/The Cinema. So thank you to Marty Walsh and to Leanne Gale, who both subscribed for our new yearly subscription.
Oh, so exciting!
Which is available.
You have to listen to us for a whole year now.
Thanks, guys, and thank you to...
But you get 10% off if you do that.
To James and to Emma Curry, also new subscribers, who subscribed at the rate of £2 or £3 a month, or you can do the year to get 10% off. And if you do that, you get access to loads of old movie reviews that we do that you guys get to decide on what we watch, and loads of TV reviews as well, like WandaVision, and we'll cover Falcon and the Winter Soldier and all that stuff.
And actually we just released, you'll see on your feed, the episode before this, we've put one of what was a Patreon only episode, we've put it on the main feed, which was a Series 5 discussion on Line of Duty for anyone who wants a recap.
And we're going to be watching Line of Duty Season 6 tonight, and we're going to be covering that over on our Patreon as well. Okay, we're just going to take a quick break because we need to attend to our kids. We'll be back after whatever music I'm about to insert here. Right, sorry about that. We are back. We are ready to talk spoilers for Justice League.
I'm trying to think
The Snyder's cut.
how we can talk spoilers. Because there's a lot to talk about, so I think we should go character by character. Is that the easiest way to do it?
Sure, who do you want to start with?
I guess we need to start
Steppenwolf.
the biggie, Superman.
Oh, yeah.
So I think...
Oh, he was in that, wasn't he?
He was, and like obviously I alluded to it before spoilers, but I think how they paced this was very clever with Superman because, okay, accepting the fact that we already know what was going to happen because we've seen the movie before. Before we saw the movie, we saw trailers about Superman being in it, and at the end of the last movie, Batman v Superman, we saw Superman shaking his grave. So we always knew Superman was coming back.
Shaking his grave. Ooh.
I actually had completely misremembered and actually thought we'd seen his hand coming out of the grave at the end of Batman v Superman, but Dave told me that didn't happen.
That was the film Carrie.
So I think they held him off as long as they could. I think that was well done, but there was some really weird stuff.
It's easy to hold someone off as long as you can when you've got 4 hours.
Well, yeah, but like as in, because otherwise the danger with Superman is just, Superman will just come and fix everything. So we needed him to feel very absent, and they wanted us to feel Lois's grief. But there was some weird stuff before he came back. Like his mom came to visit Lois and was like, my house has been foreclosed, you've grieved long enough, you need to get back, back on your feet.
If only somebody would buy the bank.
But she's like, you need to get back on your feet. But we don't know how much time has passed, right? It didn't seem to be very long. But then the mom leaves the apartment and it turns out that she's the Martian pretending to be...
Martian Manhunter.
But pretending to be Clark's mom.
Not only that,
What?
it turns out the Martian Manhunter they're implying has been the general from Man of Steel, who was a big player in the Superman movie the whole time.
So like, what? But why is he pretending to be Clark's mom and delivering that piece of information?
I think I don't know is the answer.
It was
I think
really
Can
confusing.
somebody please explain it to us?
Like, you had 4 hours to tell us whatever you wanted to tell us. Why put this really confusing scene in? I got way
Maybe
too...
he wanted Lois to feel like she could go back to work. Was that it? Because they need her at the Daily Planet.
Like, they needed Lois when Superman was resurrected, right? To be like, remember who you are,
he
Clark.
didn't know that.
No.
He didn't know what they were going to do.
No, but she was there every day anyway. We saw that in her scene when she got the cup coffee.
Yeah.
So...
But he pushed her towards deciding that was her last day, remember? And then she was going to go back to work.
But why? Anyway, so that's very odd.
I don't know. Basically, the movie just wanted to show us Martian Manhunter, and then in the process completely undercut a pretty good scene between two good actors grieving, right?
Yeah.
Because then it was like, the mother was like, wow, they're really bonding. I was like, oh no, it's just a shapeshifter dude.
It's a little bit
pretending
like,
to cry.
It was
I'm
Martian
like,
Manhunter all
very
along.
good.
So, yeah, that was odd. Then when Clark does come back and he's like evil for all of a minute, which I really enjoyed seeing Superman's full power against...
I don't think he was evil. I think he was confused and was defending himself.
He seemed to not know who he is, but wasn't it so cool seeing his raw strength against the other Justice League members?
Oh, yeah, it was awesome.
I really enjoyed all that. And then they go back to the farm, and then this is very confusing because Superman and Lois go into the mom's house, which we know has been foreclosed, but she doesn't even seem to have been able to, like, pack up anything in the house. Like, all the stuff is still in the house. I was like...
Yeah, all the clothes are still
Why? What's happening
He's just
with
like,
this house?
just going to go put on this check shirt.
It was all such an odd plot. And then at the very end, obviously, they get back to the house again, and then Batman's like, I bought the bank. So every part of that that whole plot was confusing, but I really enjoyed when Superman came back and when he kind of finally met Alfred and then went and joined the guys. But I love that Cyborg was still the key to destroying the mother boxes.
Yeah, not Superman.
Not Superman, albeit he assisted. So I think what I enjoyed is how long they held him off for and how he just kind of complimented them.
Yeah, because he's a tricky character.
He is
he's
tricky.
too powerful, so you either have to sideline him or make it so that the solution doesn't involve any of his powers, which are basically all-encompassing.
Why did he wear a black suit then, though? What was that about?
Because it's so awesome and black and cool, right?
I mean, I did think it looked awesome. I didn't understand it.
I don't think there's any practical reason for it, except Zack Snyder wanted him to be all in black because dark is better.
Okay.
And then there's literally one of the titles. All the parts of this have titles, and one of them is just something darker. And I'm just
really?
like,
That was the name of one of the titles?
That was one of them, I think. Yeah.
Oh.
Which is basically like Zack Snyder's approach to movie making. And to cinematic universe.
Make it darker, make it slower.
Make it darker, serious,
slower.
and very po-faced.
And
But
let's-
again, guys, don't come at me. I like this movie. I really liked it.
What about Cyborg then? Let's talk about him. I really enjoyed his backstory.
Yeah, he's the heart of this movie,
Yeah.
which is a real surprise because he's like totally background in the other one, and like you don't really have a sense of his MO, his backstory, who he is, what he can do. You don't have a
In
sense
the
of
old
that
movie.
in the old one, yeah. But in this one, you get this awesome scene where he's kind of discovering his powers through his dad's tape recorder, and his dad's basically coaching him instead of just speaking to him.
Well, he won't listen to his dad, though. He hates him.
Oh, I guess that's the point. Okay, so
But I
he's
just
just
love
like,
that it was at
maybe
that-
you won't listen to me in person, but perhaps you will hit play on this cassette recorder. And then he basically, I love that, him discovering, and it's kind of, this is one of the rare points in this movie where exposition was done well, technically, in that they're showing us like how he visualizes in his mind like every computer system in the world he has access to, and they illustrate it through I thought a really nice example of like he sees somebody at an ATM struggling, he sees like a literal interpretation of her bank account being like a floating wad of cash.
Yeah, I like that.
And then he just goes with his hands and like it increases the cash.
It also showed us his character because when given this gift, what he does is gives a poor mother
exactly.
money for her and her child.
Yeah.
So I did enjoy
I
that.
like that, and it's one of the it's a better example of how these characters can impact the lives of individual people in this world than what we got in the theatrical cut, which was a Russian family occasionally looking out the window and seeing people flying around at the end and going like, "Oh, help us!"
And what about, I can't recall his name, but the actor who plays Cyborg's dad, I love him, and he's the dad in Scandal.
Yeah, and he's the dad, and he's the guy from Terminator 2 who invents Cyberdyne guy.
So yeah,
and he's basically
so
the same
enjoyable.
character in this. He's both those characters meshed together.
He's just got the best voice. I find him hugely enjoyable.
Well, he's great, and they gave him a death in this, which they didn't. I don't think they bothered with in the theatrical one. So they gave Cyborg more of an emotional impact at the end.
And he sacrificed himself. And then I really enjoyed Cyborg's. You know the way they were saying to Cyborg, if you go into the mother boxes, they'll spot your weakness and they'll tap into it. And then when he finally goes into the mother boxes, and they're like, "We can make you whole again."
Yeah, and they are present as Atomic Kitten, minus your one from the
Caricatona.
Iceland ads. Nice esoteric UK reference for everyone there.
But I really enjoyed when he was like, "I am whole," or whatever. It's like, Cyborg.
And then they literally turn into witches or something. Like
They were like Dementors or something. So I quite
There's
enjoyed
some weird stuff in this
I
movie.
quite enjoyed all that. I really like Cyborg. Next, let's get to Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
She is always accompanied by music, which I both enjoyed and laughed at the same time.
It's either the music that accompanies her is either like over the top guitar or like spooky sort of a weird like ancient music, like a choir.
Yeah, very enjoyable.
Yeah.
I
gotta say, I love the music in this movie.
Yeah, I really like the music as well.
Whenever that Superman theme comes in, that I think Hans Zimmer did a few years ago for Man of Steel, that's an awesome theme.
See,
It's
I
like
didn't really
for me, it's
notice
as
that.
good as the John Williams one.
I think because the Wonder Woman's so overt, I noticed less of the
And
other
by
ones.
overt, you mean in your fucking
Exactly.
face.
But I do love
I don't like the
Wonder Woman
thing.
I really love her in this movie. I think she's a brilliant character, and I think she, like Gal Gadot, is just unbelievable.
Apparently it's Gadot.
Gadot, is it?
Yeah.
She's just like an incredible action star, and I think she's really good at emoting, and like she's a unique actress, I think, in that she can be so physical. She can also be quite emotional, and she's actually, I think, a good comedic actress as well. I think she's like a full package. That
I
is
agree.
Just amazing
I agree.
casting.
She really is. She's embodied Wonder Woman now for 3 movies, and 4 technically, and has done it like. And really, I can't picture anyone else in the role, and I think that's a good.
Yeah.
That's the best thing you can say. And I think the thing that she expresses really well, which is kind of Wonder Woman's main, like, USP, is compassion, right? And I think that you get like a nice little scene where this, she's just stopped these terrorists at the beginning, and this little girl says, "I want to be like you when I grow up," which is a little like it's cheesy and on the nose, but like I kind of like that this movie is just showing us like what superhero movies used to be. in a way.
and I
It's
like
like
that
there's no
scene as
cleverness about any of this. It's very sincere and po-faced, and for the most part I think that kind of works. I'm okay with just like big bad villains and heroic people, and I think that's what these movies need to be. I think it's what Man of Steel and Batman v Superman was lacking in. That sort of, he leaned more into the grey area and the angst of all these characters. But like, I don't want Wonder Woman to have angst.
I mean, she has angst because it comes up all the time. Like when she sees a plane, I knew someone once who would have wanted to fly that. Yet we get a Wonder Woman just still mourning Steve.
But she still knows what the right thing to do is in all situations.
But why is she like in a museum in Paris painting a statue, but then next minute is in Metropolis
London
or wherever,
stopping,
or in London on the roof of a bank stopping terrorists? Like, it's slightly, I found this confusing in her last movie as well, the one we watched in January or February of this year. She seems to be kind of like 1 minute like scanning malls or banks looking for baddies, and then another minute is just like restoring art somewhere else. So pretty powerful.
Gotta have a day job.
She also wears crazy high heels, which are ridiculous, though they did reference it in the second movie that like her specific powers help you move in high heels. I don't know why Story's wearing them, but I do really enjoy her. But speaking of actors who are disposable, apparently this franchise thinks Ben Affleck is, because Robert Pattinson's replacing him next time.
Yeah, and
which
look,
made all the Ben Affleck stuff seem a little bit pointless when we were watching this movie, because I think he's a great Batman. I actually personally will think he's a much better, I would have see him as a much better Batman than Robert Pattinson, partially because I really like that Batman's older in this. But the stuff they all set up in this, like he's just bringing the gang together, you know, he's not necessarily doing very much other than that. But they shot all the stuff at the end with him and Joker, and then him and Martian Manhunter, that felt like they were leading up to a sequel with Ben Affleck, so I'm genuinely confused now. What's the story with Robert Pattinson?
Yeah, that just felt like it felt like the post-credits sting had been put in front of the credits and extended by half an hour.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, and that kind of killed the... Do you know, it reminded me of the Return of the King. It had too many endings.
Yeah.
And actually, so much of this movie reminded me of Lord of the Rings. You had like the fight from thousands of years ago in which Darkseid comes and like basically lads from 300 plus Amazonians, and like that wouldn't have looked out of place in Lord of the Rings. Plus that, then what happened is, and they gave one to the world of men, and they gave one to the elves and one to the dwarves. Like the way their solution to segmenting the evil mother boxes is the same as the Kate Blanchett exposition in Lord of the Rings.
Most fantasy is very derivative. So,
yeah, true.
Like, I wouldn't hold that against it.
But it kind of feels rooted in that. A lot of, and all the Amazonian stuff, like and also like a king. You know, Aquaman is basically Strider, Aragorn, right? He's coming. He's a lost king who's needs to return to his kingdom and reclaim his weapon in order to do so. It's like, I guess you're right. A lot of this is just
fantasy is like that, though.
Fantasy and sci-fi storytelling.
Why, you're right on the epilogue being so long, and like I felt like when that scene actually happened with Joker and Batman, I was so confused. Dave had to explain to me that it was a dream that Batman's had in a different movie, which I didn't remember.
How is he having these dreams?
But it was unclear because we went from a normal scene to that. They should have actually just for a second put in Ben Affleck asleep so that I could have been
they should have had
this is a dream. What am I watching?
A 10-minute scene of Ben Affleck like making a chamomile tea, getting into bed, checking his phone, and then going to sleep, and then cut to that. Am I right?
Yeah, well, that would have made more sense to me because I was watching it with you. Luckily, you explained, but I literally didn't know what I was watching. And I'm not a fan of Jared Leto as the Joker anyway, and clearly he was not with Ben Affleck when they shot this because it was surely a COVID reshoot, so they're not even in the same room, and it was just really over the top and weird, and I just kept thinking, but we know Robert Pattinson's going to be Batman, so what's the story?
That's the interesting thing with like this, like what comes next? Like is this going to be like, it seems like this is going to be really popular, and already the fan base is mobilizing to restore the Snyderverse. So I think I would not be surprised if there was a sequel commissioned to this movie.
But haven't they already filmed the Robert Pattinson one?
Yeah. But then that can just happen as its own thing, I guess. I mean, they also filmed a Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, which doesn't tie into this universe, right?
I guess, yeah. It's all extremely complex.
It's almost like they don't know what the fuck they're doing over there, right?
It's just, I get that, like, in Zack Snyder's original vision, this was being set up, but I feel like, given this was kind of a 4-hour standalone, it was a little bit odd to throw all that in at the end.
Yeah, it's his pitch for give me my sequel. Like, he had 2 sequels planned.
And then Martian Manhunter shows up right at the end, basically begging Ben Affleck to be in the sequel. So that's happening as well. But I did enjoy...
I gotta say, that was pretty cheap. When you look at, we've seen
That was so
Marvel
pointless.
do this for 10 years, and it tends to be now they've gotten to the point, the Marvel stuff, where they're quite like teasery or quite organic in the way that they tease stuff. This was pretty on the fucking nose. Like he just literally flies down and says, my name, they call me Martian Manhunter, and I'd like to join your team, please.
But that
It's
can't
like
be the end of a movie. Like, the movie, to me, like, there needs to be a genuine ending to the narrative, and then something like
But that happened 25 minutes before this
Yes,
scene.
and I think how Marvel do it makes more sense having it as an end credit scene, or you could have it as a little moment before the end of the movie, but then you have to finish the movie for us. Like, the end of this movie, like, the only kind of conclusion we get is that, okay, they saved the world and Superman's mom's got her house back. Like, okay, but like, what else? What about Cyborg? What's he going to do now?
Well,
So
what
anyway-
else? Well, to be fair, now you get that scene with Bruce and Diana going into Wayne Manor, I think, and it's all dusty, and they're like, "Oh, you could put a big table here, have a whole Justice League
Yes,
HQ."
like the side, like maybe they'll do like a little bonus like house show about it or something. Like, that would be really fun actually if we saw some interior design. But yeah, so then we've talked about Ben Affleck, we've talked about Wonder Woman, Cyborg, Superman. Who else? Oh yeah, the Flash is 100% the weak link
Yeah,
for
so
me.
you said that you've covered that already. You
Yeah.
didn't like him. I think
I
he's
didn't
doing.
dislike him. He just was the least interesting.
I mean, I think Ezra Miller's doing a pretty good job here of providing a comic sort of relief character with a bit of heart. I like the stuff with him and his dad, Billy Crudup.
I really like that stuff, and I loved our intro to Flash when we saw him rescue that young woman who was driving
awesome
in the
scene.
car.
Except for the weird music, and then he pinches a hot dog out of the air, and I'm just like, this is a bit funny.
That was weird, but I loved all the slow-mo stuff with Flash. I thought looked really cool.
Yeah, it looks really good.
Like, I was definitely into that. I don't know where it's going to go, and I don't know what the story of Ezra Miller was, but I feel like he's been cancelled or something since
There's sexual inappropriate.
Yeah, so is he going to
things
even be in the next
hovering around
movie? I don't know. So that was all a bit weird to me. And then who's the last character? Oh, Aquaman. So
Yeah.
as we said, like, we really liked the Aquaman movie, but I guess that wasn't out before this, so this would have been our character introduction to Aquaman. And I think it's a pretty decent one.
Yeah, you get Willem Dafoe and Mira show up a bit more, which they didn't in the original.
We get to see what happens when he leaves, like, these towns.
Yeah.
The women all sing mournful songs about him and, like, clutch his jumper and smell it.
That was creepy.
Yeah, that was all
What's
weird.
up with that?
But I mean, to
She,
be
like,
fair,
she's a bit stalkery.
he's incredibly good looking, and he does show out of the ocean. What makes no sense to me is before he jumps back into the ocean every time, he rips off his top,
Yeah.
always walks into the ocean in a pair of jeans.
Yeah.
Why?
Because otherwise you got his schlong hanging out.
But how does he come out of the ocean then? Where does he get the next top from?
Well, that is the answer is right in front of us. That woman looks after his clothes
That's got to be
while
the
he's
thing,
away.
because it makes no sense.
Then he walks to her house naked, and then she hands him
No,
all
he's
the
got the
clothes
jeans on.
she has ironed and pressed
Actually,
and smelt.
that was one thing that I thought was a bit funny at the end for Aquaman. So, like, we know kind of doing stuff to water is his power, but when they're all together in the final battle scene, he seems to be just doing, like, sound waves. Like, I didn't quite know what he could have brought to that battle scene because there was no water there.
I don't quite know either.
And
I mean,
they
I
didn't-
guess they can all manipulate water when they're down there and create like bubbles so they can have air down there. So I guess he can do that.
I did
in
enjoy
normal air? I
the
don't
last
know.
scene when, like, they kind of all combine to kill the baddie. So he, like, spears him with his pitchfork
Oh yeah,
thing.
and they
What's it
chuck
called
him
again?
into the portal, and then Wonder Woman cuts
Chops
off
his head off.
in
Yeah, that
slow
was
motion.
awesome. That was really
It's
cool.
quite gruesome, actually, in parts. This movie.
It was, yeah, but I quite enjoyed that. And then Aquaman's very end was him getting on the back of a truck to go see his dad, I think, drinking whiskey. And I was like, but doesn't your dad live in a lighthouse at the end of, like, a dock? Didn't we see that in the other movie?
Yeah,
So
why not
couldn't
swim
you-
there?
Yeah, you could have just swum and got
Yeah.
there. But I guess because he's, like, half man, he wants to just lie in a truck and drink whiskey.
Yeah, why did he go back to Iceland just to tell them that he was going to go see his dad?
Yeah, so
It
none of
doesn't
that
make
quite
sense.
makes sense.
You're right, because the start of that scene is him and Willem Dafoe and Mira standing on a beach, which means why wouldn't he have just met them where they live?
And he just
so they
makes-
arranged to meet at that beach so that then he could say, right, I'm off to see my dad now, who is a short swim away, but
Yeah.
I'm going to get in the back of this pickup truck.
And he doesn't even really he speaks to Willem Dafoe and then just kind of leers at Mira and then walks off.
Yeah,
So that's
he
all a
says
bit
nothing
weird.
to her, even
Yeah.
though they're like in love in the next movie.
Yeah, but the next movie set after this, you have to
Yeah,
remember.
I
And,
guess.
and I kind of kept forgetting that, so I was getting a bit confused by some of the Aquaman stuff. And that's what's weird about this. You're watching it way out of order of when it was designed to be watched. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's all weird as well. But yeah, so there's loads to talk about in spoilers, but at the same time, like, ultimately...
What did we talk about Steppenwolf? Or sorry, what were we going to say?
I was just going to say, like, ultimately, like we said, all these kind of stories are very similar and derivative. So there's nothing about this film in terms of, like, plot that's actually very interesting. What's interesting is how he's executed it and how we get to know the characters, right?
Yeah, it's style over substance, right?
I know, I think there's substance to it as well. I'm just saying I don't think the story isn't original, right? We could list off
That's what I mean by substance. Like, I mean, the substance
substantive, though, that we get to know the characters.
Yeah, but you get it. I mean, and I think it's like, I agree with you. I think it's like what we get is a sufficient level of character interaction, but nothing new, exciting elsewhere in the movie. But it's really way more cohesive and competent than what we got before. And there are some really nice stylish touches. And that's kind of how I would sum up Zack Snyder in general. And I actually like quite a lot of Zack Snyder's movies, but he's very like style over substance. That's kind of how it is. And when he tries to do substance, you end up with a 10-minute scene of a woman smelling a jumper and singing a song in Icelandic, which you just expected him to have suggested shooting that in black and white. I think he's even got a black and white version of this movie. So it's kind of like he's somebody who tries to apply like serious real world art pretensions to comic book properties, and that's kind of, I don't think he has quite pulled that off ever. And whereas this movie has that sincerity and that po-faceness, but it also just has clearly defined heroes and villains and feels very traditional, and I think that's the reason it kind of works.
But why, like, so his original desire, if it had been released theatrically, would never have been this duration, right? So I think what I'd like to have seen, and no, I'm not asking for a third movie, is the Snyder cut,
Snyder theatrical cut.
Yeah, because like, for all we've said that we enjoyed this and we did, like, I don't by any means think it was worth an additional $70 million and that a 3 hours and 45 minute runtime.
Yeah, but that's not up to us to decide.
No, I'm just saying, like, I don't think...
It's a good investment of money, I'd say.
No, but I'm just saying I don't think it's warranted all of that as much as I think it's better than the first one, and I actually enjoyed the experience of watching it.
But it probably did warrant it if there was a huge demand for it, right?
No, I just mean, like, artistically, I don't see that it's like... You know, there's obviously different elements, and like as we said, most of the footage we actually didn't see before. But it's not like this whole new thing. Like, it's still ultimately the same film. And it's interesting because, you know, the normal metrics of judging like cinematic performance is box office numbers.
Yeah.
And we don't have that here. So I don't know how the studios would even judge it to be a good enough success to warrant a remake, because we all know, like, online hashtags and demands and stuff, that doesn't actually necessarily translate to money.
But Warner Bros. Will have the actual data from HBO Max. Plus,
yeah, but the data is just people who watched it on the HBO Max. That does not mean those people would have paid $20 to see the cinema.
They could look at the chart of acquiring new subscribers during that period, and some of that you could attribute to this movie.
100%, but that doesn't mean that you've necessarily, in the traditional sense, like, put bums in seats.
No, it's not as
I wouldn't have paid to see this in the cinema, but I'll watch it on Sky
It's not
Cinema.
as clear a metric as box office. But I think it is interesting. I think the whole thing is interesting because it's not the typical Hollywood model at all in its genesis or its release.
Now, it's also because of COVID, right? So it's all very unique. So I find the whole thing fascinating.
But this, honestly, I think this could shake up the whole industry and the way things are developed in future, potentially.
Yeah, potentially.
I mean, it was already, a lot of this was already happening.
It's very unusual, though, for a director to have left under those circumstances. You know what I mean? Like, it is unique in that sense as well. But yeah, I don't think we have too much more to say about it. You reckon the baddie was way better developed in this?
Yeah, he was more interesting because he was like, in the theatrical one, he was just like, I'm here to take over the world. Oh no, you stopped me. And in this one, he's more like, I'm here to take over the world. Please respect me, master.
He's just like, and I'm just like, do a good job for my boss.
They didn't really humanize him as such, but I recognized a desperation in his actions that made him a bit more interesting. And it also, by hinting at these the people above him, and then when you see his power, you're like, that actually establishes how powerful they must be.
Yeah.
So it made the threat of Darkseid and his minions behind that portal feel actually quite significant when they're all facing off against him.
Yeah, I enjoyed the portal bit at the end when they're looking at each other. And also, I was so interested in this bad guy of like, you know, the way they basically said he made a massive cock up like a while ago and he was just in the bad books ever since. To the point where I almost thought, oh God, I'd love to see what he did. And I was like, no, Kathy, we don't need any more backstory in this movie. But I wouldn't have actually minded seeing what he did that was so bad. But I enjoy that now we've established that, okay, fine, never mind the mother boxes. Earth is now the place of total death or whatever.
What did he do? Was
so
it an accounting error? There's another reason for them to want to come back to Earth now. Yeah, the anti-life equation, obviously.
Anti-life equation,
yeah we all want that anti-life equation.
But again, it's like, it's very unsatisfying if this ends up being the last Justice League movie in this sense, because you've just left a load of loose threads now for us, and I think they shouldn't have done that. I think that was poor.
Well, look, I think it's him pitching for more movies. Why not? And that's what he wanted this movie to be. And look, if it never happens, I'm satisfied that we got a Justice League movie which is deserving of its title, I think.
Ooh, you don't think the old one was deserving of its title?
The old one wasn't a good experience. No, I didn't enjoy that.
Yeah, me neither.
And I quite enjoyed this. It took longer to experience it. But I'm
4 years longer and 2 hours longer.
I'm satisfied. I feel like the Justice League were finally brought to a screen in a satisfying manner that felt true to who they are.
It's just so weird with all this stuff as well, because it's like there's also all the TV shows of all the DC stuff. Like there is a Flash TV show, for example. Like this,
but they've acknowledged Ezra Miller showed up in that in an Easter egg. Spoilers for the spoilers for the Flash TV show.
All of this stuff is so complex because we've also all seen. I mean, we've all seen a lot of Superman stuff, like big ones being like Lois and Clark and like Smallville.
There's a new Lois and Clark.
This is what I mean. It's just, it all feels a bit endless, and I think that's where I get a little bit bored with the stuff, because nothing's ever definitive. You know, like they say in Marvel, no one's ever really dead. Like all that stuff just drags on a bit, and like.
Oh, strap in, because this is the rest of our lives on this planet. It's been going on since.
I think that's why
Superman and Batman been around since the 20s. All the Marvel stuff has been around since the 40s, 50s, 60s. It's like this is never going to end in our lifetime.
But I think that's why I'm
We're going to see 10 more Spider-Men. You're going to see 100 more Batmen.
But I think that's why I'm disappointed by the end of this movie, because we all know there's millions of other stuff going on in these universes. I would have liked to just see a complete movie.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, I'm just a bit disappointed with that. But yeah, we better get off because we've talked about this thing for as long as we
It's been fun though.
It has been fun. And again, we're just always desperate for a new big blockbuster release. Like there's so many movies around that have been nominated for Oscars that look amazing. We have no idea how to watch them. It's so weird not being able to go to the cinema.
Yeah. I think Judas and the Black Messiah just came out on Sky.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll try. Like, it's hard to get at movies at the moment. So I can't wait for the cinemas to open.
Yeah, if only there was like a place where we could all go and watch them on a big screen together.
But thank you everyone for continuing to listen throughout the pandemic when our podcast doesn't make much sense. If you like what you're hearing, we would really love if you could support us and head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and subscribe. That is a great help to us. If you want to hear more film and TV reviews, head over to patreon.com/Cinemile, where we cover load and load of retro movies and a ton of new TV shows. And head over to all our socials at the Cinemile to get in touch.
That's it. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
We live in a society where honor is a distant memory. Isn't that right, Batman?
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What would you say if I told you there's a book that can teach you how to win The Bachelor?
What would you say if I told you producers caught multiple finalists reading that book in this season that's currently airing?
What would you say if I told you the producers don't want anyone to know that their show has been compromised?
How do we know all this? We wrote that book.
I'm Lizzie Pace.
And I'm Chad Kulchin.
We're the authors of How to Win the Bachelor and the hosts of the Game of Roses podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we break down all the biggest plays, errors, and MVPs in the game of reality television.
Listen to Game of Roses wherever you get your podcasts and go to howtowinthebachelor.com to get our book.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.